Welcome to my channel. Let's look at arithmetic sequence in series. So we are going to solve some examples using the formula. The first formula will help us to find the number of terms, and the second formula will help us to find the sum of the terms. Let's begin with the first question. So we are supposed to find the 100th term of the sequence on the screen. So you are supposed to use the formula that will help us to find the number of terms. So this is the formula, and the N stand for the 100th term that has been given. The A superscript 1 stand for the first term. So let's write the information that we have from the question. So our A1 is 2, our N is 100, and our common difference is by subtracting the 4 and the 2 and also 6 and the 4. So the common difference will give you 2. Alright, now let's do a substitution. We are going to put this into our formula. So as you can see on the screen, substituting the numbers according to what we have in the formula, then you simplify. So at the end, we are going to get the 100th term to be 200. So let's look at second example. So the same strategy, but this time our sequence are in the form of roots, but we are still going to use the same strategy to find the 70th term of this sequence. So what you need to do is you just first have to write the formula down, then we need to use a substitution, which our first term is 2 root 5, then our n is the 70th. So the d is the difference between the first two terms, which we have 4 root 5 minus 2 root 5. So that will give us, the difference becomes 2 root 5, surely. Let's put the substitute into the formula, then simplify. So you just do the substitution according to what we have in the formula, where you know your D, you know your A, and you know your N. Then by using calculator, you can work out with the brackets. That will give us 13d root 5. Then the total answer will be 140 root 5. This gives us the 70th term. The third example here. Now let's look at this. It said we are supposed to find the first term and the common difference. So with the condition given to us, we need to express our information here into two equations. Then we solve this problem simultaneously. So beginning with the first information that we have here, we are matching up to the 8th term, and our n in this case supposed to be 8. So using the formula to find the number of the term, just do the substitution, whereby it will give us our first equation. Then we also use the second information over there, that is the 20th term, that will give you the 44, to also get our second equation. And the term that has been given is 20th, so our n is 20. So when we do the substitution according to the formula, we equate it to 44 as it has been given. So our second equation will be defined here by doing the substitution. So you are supposed to do these two equations simultaneously, but you are going to introduce -1 to the first equation and multiply through the terms so as it will help us to cancel the variable a when we add these two equations. So let's perform the multiplication aspect. Multiply through the equation 1 by -1, and you're going to get new expressions for the equation 1. So with this new equation that we have for equation 1, we are going to use this and add it to the equation 2. So it will be simple for us to cancel one of the variable in our equation. So let's do the addition. Alright, so when we add the corresponding terms, surely our a will be cancelled, that is 0, and we'll get the d aspect to be 12. So finding d, we are going to get d to be 3. Alright, so as you have gotten to solve for d, let's also solve for a. So we are going to put d into the first equation. That gives us the simplest term that we have in the equation. So put the 3 inside the place of d. So let's do the substitution. Wherever you see the d, you put 3 there. So multiply it with a 7 so that you can find the first term. Alright. So make the a the subject. So we follow the screenwriting, and our a answer is going to be -13. So our first term is -13. Alright, so let's look at the fourth example. In this case, you are supposed to find the value of x in these consecutive terms. So you are going to use the strategy of the common difference. So the strategy says that the difference of the first two terms should be equal to the difference of the next two terms. So we have these terms as our first term, second term, and third term. They are in expression form, so we are going to perform the difference in these expression forms. So taking the a2 minus a1 should be equal to a3 minus a2. So substituting the expression in place of them so that you can solve for the value of x. Alright, so we have the 2x plus 1 minus x plus 3 equal to 5x plus 2 minus 2x plus 1. Alright, so you simplify the bracket. You have 2x plus 1 minus x minus 3 equal to 5x plus 2 minus 2x minus 1. Alright, so we need to further simplify what we have here for you to get the value for x. So follow up the screenwriting, then know how the simplifying will go. So making x, grouping like terms in this stage, all the coefficients, the variable will go to a side. Then finally our x will be defined as -3/2. So this is how to solve this problem. Let's look at the fifth example. Okay, so our fifth example says find a sum. So I'm going to use a second formula, the sum of the arithmetic sequence, to answer this question. So we are using the formula sum of n equal to n over 2 to bracket 2a plus brackets n minus 1 times the difference, common difference. Alright, so let's come back to our question here. We have our a to be 1, the common difference obviously to be 2. Then our n is not given, so our n is not given, so we need to use the first formula to find the value for n before you can make the substitution into the formula for finding the sum of the sequence. So note the first formula down here so that we can use the substitution accordingly. Though the last term has been given to be 59, so we have the formula being equal to 59. Then you make the a and the d substitution accordingly. You can get your n after your simplifying according to what we have on the screen. So you group like terms, then divide both sides by 2, so our n is given as 30. Now you're going to do substitution. Wherever you see a, you put 1 there. Wherever you see d, you put 2 there. Wherever you see n, you put 30 there in the sum of the arithmetic sequence formula. So you continue from there. Make the right substitution as we have the values being recorded. Then you simplify accordingly with the help of calculator. So brackets first. Deal with the brackets before you multiply by the 15. Alright, so 15 times 60, and our sum of the arithmetic sequence in this question is going to be 900. That is it. Let's go to the last example. Based on the same sum of the arithmetic sequence, which our last term has been given as 39. So using the formula, the sum of the arithmetic sequence formula, to also answer this question. Alright, so we have it to be in this form. So the question here is also the same as differentiating all the terms with a plus. So there's nothing different in this. We can find our information terms from what we have there. Our first term is -9. Our common difference will be -5 minus -9. That will give you -5 plus 9, and that is 4. So our common difference is 4. We also have to find the number of term, which is not given, but the last term is 39, so it will help us to find the number of term by using the first formula. To answer the value for n. So that's the first formula. Then the formula should be equal to 39 because that's the last term given in the question. So substitute a and d into the formula so that we can have our simple linear equation and find the value for n. So let's group like terms, simplify, then group like terms here. So 39 plus 13 equal to 4n. Then after that we divide through by 4 to make the coefficient of n to be 1. So finally, our n is going to be 13. We substitute the 13 into our sum of the arithmetic sequence formula. That is giving us n over 2, 2a plus n minus 1 g. So we have all the information here to substitute. So let's put them into the formula and work them out. Make sure you substitute your a, your g, and your n according to how the formula looks like. Then you follow up with the simplification procedures to get the final value for the sum of the arithmetic sequence for this pattern. So at the end of the day, I'm going to get our final answer to be 13 times 15. That will give us, so from the calculator, we are going to get 195. Thank you for watching.